In this tutorial, I want to quickly walk you around the user interface. Now I do realise that not everything I'm about to show you will make full sense, certainly if you are brand new to Dreamweaver. Here is our splash screen. If this is the first time you are running Dreamweaver, then this list here of recent items, well, this will be empty. But as you can see, I've had open various different files, and that's why they are listed here. The most recent at the top and running down to the bottom. Now in this tutorial, we're not going to create a new document, i.e. a starting page. We'll leave that for a later tutorial. And I'm only pointing that out because within this Create New column, this is where we would start a new document. But because we haven't started one as of yet with this particular site, then a lot of the options around the user interface will be greyed out. And they'll only become available to you once we do have a document open. But prior to creating a document, let's have a quick look around to see what is available. Running horizontally across the top left here is our menu bar, and I'm sure you won't be surprised to learn simply clicking on any of these, the first one, File for example, reveals various options related to that particular function. Now, as I've alluded to, a lot of what we see here won't actually be available to you just yet, because we haven't got any document open. That said, I do want to point something out. Your file menu drop-down list here might not look exactly the same as mine, and that's because my very top option here, where it says New PV11 Page Pack, you probably won't see that on your system, so don't panic if you can't see it. You're not missing anything. This is just simply a file operation that I can use to access one of those extensions that we installed in the previous tutorial. Remember that Mirage extension? Well, if I wanted to access it, one way is to do it by coming here. So as I say, if you can't see things like this, don't panic, there's nothing wrong with your copy of Dreamweaver. What you'll probably see at the top here is New, and of course you would be able to create a new document by clicking on there. It's not the only way. We've already seen, haven't we, that central column headed with Create New. Well, we could create a new document using either method. Moving down just below, if we wanted to open up a previously created document, then we would click on Open, or just below that, Open Recent. And that clearly operates in the same way as the first column on the splash screen. Now I won't hold you back by talking about all these other operations until a little bit later once we do create a document. Moving along to our second menu button, Edit. Well, once more, we have got an awful lot of greyed out operations or functions here for the very same reason. But just as a quick reminder, right down at the bottom is where you access your Preferences dialog. On a Mac, you would go up to the toolbar and click on Dreamweaver and select Preferences. Clicking on here, as we've seen previously, opens up our Preferences dialog. Now, apart from the file type stroke editors that we set up previously, i.e. Fireworks and Photoshop, I'm pretty much going to leave our preferences as the defaults, only because it will then correspond with your copy of Dreamweaver. If I do make any changes, I will let you know. So I'll just come down to Cancel now, down here in the bottom right, and then moving along to our View menu option, well, it's within here that you can set up the way that Dreamweaver looks on your screen whilst you are building your site. And on the whole, whatever you do set up will reflect on your finished site. However, there are an awful lot of settings here, which we'll get to as we progress. There are a lot of settings here that allow you to, shall we say, overlay something, i.e. a grid or some other visual aid, over the top of your document, which will only be used whilst you are designing the site. It won't actually render out in your completed site. What I mean by that is, you might set up a grid so that you can line certain elements up, but you don't particularly want to see that grid in your final page. Well, it's within this View menu category with all these various options that you can set those sort of things up. I'll move along to our fourth category now, Insert, and I'm showing you this option because, again, my very top option here, where it says Flexi Layouts 2 Pro, you won't see that with your copy of Dreamweaver. That's another extension that I've purchased. So once more, let me just put your mind at rest. If you don't see this, then of course that's the reason. With that in mind, right down here at the bottom, we'll see another extension, and it's the one that we installed in the previous section. Remember when we downloaded through the Adobe Exchange, a drop-down menu extension? We've already seen how we can access it via a tab and an icon. Well, we can also access it here as well. And that's something that you are going to get used to whilst you are working with Dreamweaver, i.e. frequently there is more than one way of doing something. Anyway, moving along once more to Modify, I want to show you this option here, Manage Fonts. I'll click to open, and once I do, I'll see this Manage Fonts dialog. Now let me just explain what this is, and I'll have to explain by giving you a little bit of history. Until fairly recently, when you were creating a website, you pretty much had to rely on around about 6 fonts, something like that. And these fonts were known as safe fonts, because they are fonts that are pretty much guaranteed to be on every single computer in the world, whether that's a Windows machine, a Linux machine, or indeed if you are using a Mac. The reason safe fonts were used was because if you used a rather esoteric font, well that's great, it will show up on your machine because you've got that font installed on your particular PC. However, the person looking at your website, once it's been uploaded to a server, well they might not have that particular esoteric font on their PC, and therefore the browser will automatically substitute that font with something close to it, but of course you can see the problems that this could create. However, recently, the implementation of using web fonts that you can use across multiple browsers and multiple operating systems has been brought into Dreamweaver. I'll not get into the details just yet, we'll leave that for a little bit later on. It's enough to say at the moment that you have access to quite a considerable amount more fonts that can be viewed across multiple operating systems. And pretty much it's all done from within here, this Manage Fonts dialog. For the moment I'm going to leave it, so I'll just simply click on Done down here in the bottom right hand corner. Moving along to Format, well it's within here, amongst other places, that you can set up what your text looks like, and also the positioning of the text. Not just text, we can also state where images are placed on the screen too. Moving along to the Commands button, well it's within this category, albeit it's greyed out at the moment because we haven't got a document open. If you want to check the spelling within your document, and of course you are strongly advised to do this before you make the page live, well you can see the 4th option down there is Check Spelling. And then moving along now to Site, well it's within this category that we have to go to even before we start a new document, because it's within here that we set up the parameters and the information that Dreamweaver requires to know where all your assets are as you are building your site. Again, that's something we'll get to a little bit later on. Now do ignore this next tab, Web Assist. Once more, this is another company that provides extensions for you. However, you do have to pay for these. Therefore, I'm not really going to go into any detail about Web Assist during this Dreamweaver course. And then our penultimate button, Window. Once I select this, well, you are going to see some of the categories have got a check mark next to them. The top 2, for example, Insert and Properties, and also a little bit further down, Files. If you've got a check mark next to any of these categories, it just simply means that that particular panel is in view. For example, the top option, Insert, well that relates to this bar running across here. Now actually this insert bar might not be in exactly the same place as it is on your system, and that's only because I've moved it to a different position, i.e. running along here. That's where I prefer it. I'll show you how we move these around within the next few tutorials. Our second category, Properties, well we can see this right down here, running horizontally across the foot of our screen, indicated with the Properties panel tab. It's completely empty at the moment because we haven't got any document open. However, once we do open up a document, this Properties panel, as you'll see as we progress, will reflect the particular element that you've got selected on your page. Okay, so as we progress, you'll see how this adapts to whatever it is you select within the web page itself. Now do notice that even though some of these categories haven't got a check mark next to them, we can still see the panel. It's just that that particular panel isn't in focus. CSS Designer, for example, hasn't got a check mark next to it, but we can still see the tabbed panel over here. It's just that it isn't in focus, as I say. And that also applies to the option below, CSS Transitions. Over here on the right, in this panel group, well, there you'll see it. CSS Transitions. There's its tab. But as I alluded to a few moments ago, Files does have a check mark next to it. Consequently, within our panel group here, it's Files that is in focus. And then the final option is the Help button. It's from within Help that you'll be able to go straight to Dreamweaver's Exchange, open up Adobe's Help document on their website, etc., etc. You can even access Dreamweaver updates from within here too. Now just before I finish this tutorial, I want to show you this button. You can see that it's labelled as Compact. And that means, predominantly anyway, that this panel group just below, the one with files and assets and CSS Designer etc. within it, well, by having this set to compact, it means that the way our user interface is set up, well, it looks like this. And this is what's known as a workspace. However, if you wanted to alter this slightly, well, click on the drop reveal arrow there and come down to the second option, Expanded. Select it, and then instantly you'll see the area to the right, our panel group, has now been expanded so that whilst we are building a site, we have a larger panel footprint over here so that we can access all the operations and functions a little bit more easily. Whereas at the left-hand side, our design view, as it's known, has shrunken in size to compensate for this. Now I'm going to go back to the compact view, so I'll click on here once more and select the top option, Compact. Right then, so that's a first look at the user interface, albeit there's not much for us to access at the moment because we haven't got a document open. Therefore, for the moment then, I'll finish up here.